What's up, guys? Welcome to Fitter Food Radio. This is episode 191, zoning in on that 200. And today we're coming at you from the terrace, which
You're really coming at people. You're like leaning.
I am, aren't I? Hey,
I'm staying back so you can't see the wrinkles.
yeah.
Sun damage.
So just for those that are listening only, like we decided to start recording the video to go with social media and that. But yeah, it's a bit strange to us. We don't know where to look, and I'm a bit like, am I too close, too far away from the camera? I don't
You're
know.
handsome, so you can lean in. It's fine.
Oh, and you're so pretty. You're so pretty. I was just laughing there when I said terrace because it always reminds me of our friend's son who, when he was younger, couldn't say Keris, and K's were pronounced with a T, and he used to call you terrace, didn't he? Terrace.
Oh, terrace.
So it used to, and it just kind of stuck. It just stuck.
Image barking.
But today we thought we would talk about emotion because Keris and I have been like discussing this a lot lately, and it's been a big part of like the journeys that we have been on, if you like, we're in with self-development and things like that. And like we're having a really good chat the other day on one of our on our walks and around like the different emotions that there are and almost how we're programmed to a degree to suppress emotions, some more than others, and actually the negative
Come on.
connotations. That's the word. Was that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Boom.
As in like the negative
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. I was in a flow there. It's funny. I was thinking as I was saying it, I was like, there's a word. And
that wasn't a flow if you were.
No, that's what I mean.
If you're creasing the forehead, that's not a flow.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, as in up to that point, I could see the flow ending. Because I was like, you need to think this word before you get there. But yeah, flow is well and truly over. Over to you, Terrace.
I didn't have any flow.
So, yeah. And that's the end of this episode, guys.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that.
All right, negative emotions.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Yes.
For more of the same.
No, but the thing is, it's like a big thing for me on my journey and something that had a huge impact, which was incredibly powerful, was when someone said it's okay to feel, and that applies to everything. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel happy. Yeah, we try to suppress certain emotions or we label certain emotions as negative emotions and almost like we shouldn't feel that way. Anger's a big one. Like, oh no, you shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't lose your cool. You shouldn't get wound up. Why not?
But you can also have negative emotions about negative emotions.
Go on.
So
do tell.
Well, jealousy, envy. I hate these feelings, but sometimes they just pop up when you're not in a great place. Someone you absolutely love and want to be happy is. And sometimes it comes really naturally and you're like, yay, they're happy, I'm happy. And then some days you're just like, it's all right for them. And you just cannot, like, it's decades of programming. And I think it's a natural human response sometimes. But the reason the negative emotions conversation came about for us is because we've been talking about how negative emotions can make you sick and have a really potentially impact your health and drive disease processes. And this is all out there in the research, and people like Gabor Mate talk about this a lot. 100% agree with that, but then it can mean that you feel like you need to change your personality to heal from something or lower your risk of disease, or you can then get fearful about your negative emotions, but then you can't stop them, so then you're in this kind of loop of like, I'm screwed. So we were talking about, basically it's more about coming up with, I think you do need to pause and realize that negative emotions are probably taking up way more of your thought processes than they should be. I think that's a factor. And if you look carefully, media, social media, news headlines, they're all driving that process. Because I noticed one thing that I said to my dad is that he'll often message me something fearful, like there's sewage in the water where we swim or something, and could you send some good news one day? And I actually then ended up subscribing to one of the good news emails, and on social media I've changed my who I follow to like Good News Dog and people like that spread good news, with good news papers and things like that, because I was like, there's so much good going on in the world, but we're just hearing about a lot of the bad stuff because it's way more intriguing, or it kind of, it's clickbaity, so we're more likely to read it. So I think it's really good to stop for a second and go, how much do the people around me and the things that feed into my brain, how much of it is delivering bad news, fearful news, driving fear, all that kind of stuff? How much am I looking for that? Because naturally we'd want to protect ourselves. Like as cavemen, women, we'd be like, we need to know where the danger is. So we're more kind of hardwired to look for all of that, I think. So that's why we can have that negative bias. But then after a while, I think it's really good. I think this is where retreats come in. And, sometimes when you fall ill or you get burnout or you go on holiday, you suddenly realize that there's so much good and there is positive emotions there, but they've been completely crowded out. And a lot of your positive traits are not being expressed because the fear is dominating and the negative emotions, and it's kind of, the balance has been tipped. And what we know is that those negative emotions will drive up things like inflammation, because it's a protective mechanism within the body, and they will lead to the suppression of feel-good chemicals, which means you probably will drink more alcohol and want to smoke more and do things that don't serve your health. You'll struggle with motivation to exercise. They're exhausting, negative emotions as well, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They are. But you said something the other day, which was pretty cool, which is the guy you started following, who was like, like in a day you have like X amount of thousand of
he said 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. This is Dan Buglio, Buglio, who does a lot of work on healing from chronic pain.
Yeah.
And he talks about the emotional side of it.
And what did he say? So you have like 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. Like chances are some of them are going to be negative. You know what I mean? You can't just be like, oh, positivity, rainbows, butterflies, abundance, and because it's just completely unrealistic. But the convo Keris and I were having the other day was like we said earlier, it's okay to feel, and let's take some of the more, I'm trying to think of a word to say to describe certain emotions without saying a negative emotion, because I think what we're trying to establish here is that no emotion is negative. You know what I mean? It's just an emotion. But it's like, let's take anger. I think what's really powerful is to go, I'm really angry right now, and bloody rightly so. Be angry, be pissed off, at a situation, at a person, whatever it might be. But then don't hold on to it. Maybe just spend a bit of time going, why do I feel this way? And then if you can deal with it, in a constructive way, then do so. If you can't, if it's just something that someone's done, like, have that awareness, but then let it go, and
also though, remember, anger serves a purpose. So just to give an example, recently we walk around the tracks in Portugal, and we've come across a few pretty dangerous dogs, haven't we, on occasions? And you have had to literally rise up, make yourself big, and like, get away. Like it serves a purpose to be that anger. It's that aggression in that moment.
Yeah,
was very protective of us. And so
I'll tell you a story in a second.
So like you said, I think I wouldn't say that there are not negative emotions, because there are emotions that are negative, but like you said, what's negative about most emotions serve a purpose, but if they're allowed to linger for too long, this is when they start to, Joe Dispenza talks about this, become a mood, become a personality trait, which we don't want. And this is really easily, I think the other thing is, this is a learned behavior. It's, whoever we're spending time with, we are absorbing their emotions and then mimicking their emotions. If it's someone that we look up to or perhaps held in esteem, like your parents, your boss, you start to perhaps mimic that behavior because you see it as something associated with authority, success. This is a complete digression, but when I read the history of body image issues, like globally, it came when they say that a lot of traditional cultures used to feel used to believe, and still do to some degree, that curves in women was a sign of fertility, which it is. And so it was actually admired for a woman to have curves. Yet when we were when there was a bit more kind of migration and integration with different cultures, and media kind of started to put up this image of this you know, kind of very slim female physique, that became something that everyone should aspire to be, and it got associated with wealth and status and power. And that's when everybody started to go, we need to be slimmer.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? And it's nothing to do with health, because if anything, it's less healthy, you know. And this is when actually men started to see it as something that they would like their female members of the household to be, and would go home and say, stop eating, you need to be slimmer. This is what we associate with power and wealth. And I think the same could happen with emotions. If you see someone in power express aggression or arrogance, we might start to think that's what we need to do for success. And it's not the case, is it, necessarily? No. So I always think is that the point there was just whatever we're being surrounded by in terms of conversations, actions, and visuals is going to influence our emotional state. And I think something that's been really powerful for me has been spending a bit more time on my own and trying to figure out, okay, why are these emotions so dominant? Where do these come from?
Yeah.
And how can I just make them less in my day? They feature less. They're never going to go away, but they feature less. And like you said, and I can let them go. And some of that comes through a big walk or a bit of yoga. Dancing is amazing for letting emotions go. I now get why people headbang.
I don't know how they do it though, because you've done it as like a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, I feel really dizzy. Like, you know, how do these like punk rockers
keep going
and just, you know what I mean?
You know, there's a video. What's the band that sings the song Jump? You know, go ahead and jump. I can't think what they're called. Anyway, I was watching it on YouTube. There's a mashup. It's really cool. I showed it you.
Yeah.
And they've mashed up loads of 80s tunes, and that video's on it. And this is completely random again, but this guy does like backflips and like high leg kicks and then the head rock. And I'm like, God, people used to be so, they can't have trained for that. Do you know what I mean? That was just naturally, they could just be an acrobat, and then you're like, you can't even headbang without being dizzy.
You know, there is something in that actually, because when I used to play,
you were more physical in the 80s, is what I was thinking. There was more aerobics. I don't know.
When I used to play football, when I was younger, there was a kid on the team that could do somersaults.
Amazing.
But wasn't a gymnast or anything like that at all. He was just incredibly bouncy and agile. And I'm like, that's clearly like his genetics, you know, like
well, his lifestyle, who knows?
It definitely wasn't that. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Off on a tangent.
Have you done it again, ain't you? Yeah. Oh Lord.
So I was saying that, like, to release the emotion, usually something physical is really beneficial.
So that's another thing I was going to say, like, because we often talk about like tribes as well, don't we? In terms of like in a tribe, in a community, you almost have these different personality traits, and it actually works really well, you know, because you'll have like those that are kind of going into battle, those who are better suited, like staying back. Yeah. And it's like when you think of certain like athletes, for example, like when we were talking just then, I was thinking of Roy Keane. You know, Roy Keane, ex-Man United captain, was kind of renowned for being aggressive, having a temper, being quite miserable. But it made him the player that he was. It made him the leader that he was, and he's regarded to many as one of the best captains, you know, in the history of football.
Who would be the antithesis of that in Man U? Who was like soft, gentle? I don't think you can be in team sport. Really.
Yeah, I suppose like you've always got to have like an element of like aggression and competitiveness and things like that. But you know, it's like, you know, some people might look at those traits of being aggressive, bit moody, and whatever as like again negative things. But actually, in his chosen sport, it was all very much a positive.
Yeah.
You know, it played a really positive role there in his career and his achievements. But yeah, I think like the big thing, you know, on my journey, it has been like just acknowledging emotions, not dismissing them, not trying to suppress them, and not carrying guilt around feeling them. You know, like you said, it's like jealousy is another one. It's like now I'm part of like a mentorship. It's called the Awaken Man Project. It's amazing. I've been in there now for about, I actually think in August it's coming up to 3 years, 2 years.
Yeah, but we don't need to know the exact time frame. You could just...
Well, that was rude. What's wrong with, saying how long this journey has been on? I'm trying to highlight that these things don't happen overnight. It takes time. Your input has now lost us 30 seconds. I could have...
say it's the amount of time you dedicate to remembering the number that you could just go 2-3 years. Go on.
Keris,
go on.
Respectfully,
yeah,
shut your face. And there are times when I do feel bitterness and I do feel jealousy towards some of the other guys in there when they're celebrating a win. And I know it's not because I'm not happy for them. I'm truly happy for them. And this is the other thing that I've learned is like, you can feel two conflicting emotions at the same time. Yeah. Because it's like, of course I'm happy for them. They're my friends. They're my boys. I want them to win 100%. Like
the bitterness is actually more towards your own situation.
Exactly. Yeah. It's actually, it's not even aimed at them. It's aimed at, it's a reflection of how I'm feeling within myself, about myself, like where
so do you know who can change that? Myself.
Is it that bloke called me?
Yeah.
Mr. Me.
Yeah.
And it's true. But what I'm trying to say is like, in my 2, or was it 3 years that I've been with Amy?
Was it 4? I
think it was
2 or 3
293 days.
How many seconds a minute?
Like that's been really powerful for me, is being able to kind of like have that awareness and go, okay, I'm feeling this way. Why? And what does that say about me and where I'm currently at, and what do I need to do to get myself out of that?
What's interesting though is I'd say for a long time we've been kind of reflecting on the time that we've been in business. And initially when you start out in business, you're so caught up in the whole thing. And for us, it happened very quickly, didn't it? In terms of writing a book, taking our business online. We had other things that we were looking at, like running gyms and stuff. And we just got swept away in the kind of competitiveness of it all, I guess. And also the desire, like we had ambition and we had like a fierce energy to kind of do this, to help people to kind of change their lives. Is that when you're kind of in that fight flight mode all the time, you're kind of looking around at everybody else and you are feeling, especially if it's not working out for you, then the kind of jealousy and envy is just coming in constantly. And we don't have the competency that you have now, where you're like, no, the only person that needs to change this is me. What am I dissatisfied with? What's lacking in my life? And what's often interesting is it can be related to work, but it could be related to other things. For a lot of people, it's related to other things.
Yeah.
So it could be like relationships, it could be sense of purpose, it could be just the quality of your life, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, where's your time being spent. And I think, but when you're in it, in the kind of the busyness of life, it's really hard to have emotional competency. So negative stuff is flooding you. And I what was kind of interesting from a illness burnout perspective is I heard someone describe it as like you're literally just flooding your system with poison, like, because it's just, it does create a lot of tension.
Yeah.
It does shut down your immune system. It shuts down digestive function. You'll start to get symptoms that say all is not well. But again, the brain is very powerful in going, let's override that, because we've got to survive, we've got to keep going. So we override the fatigue even, you can dive into like crashes, but then you can come back out. Plus you've got caffeine and sugar and other things that stimulate you. So I think it's
hallelujah.
No,
I'm joking.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
So I think it's easy, and that's why these health crisis, burnout, basically pause buttons for some people, it ends up being even perimenopause, menopause, when you have to like check out for a little while, are really powerful, because you go, what the heck was I doing? I was just running all these like programs and didn't understand how I was kind of like basically polluting my entire body with all this stuff. And what's helpful is the recovery. Often the process, like you said, is this combination of understanding your emotions, feeling them, perhaps exploring where they came from, without having to go too deep with all of that and saying that all these childhood experiences that I had have, you know, meant that I feel this and this, and I'll, you know, I guess we've talked about this a little bit, haven't we, where we've said we've explored trauma and traumatic experiences in our personal lives, and we understand the impact that they've had on us and our personality traits and our moods and our emotions. But there's also a danger, I've said to you, that constantly going back there, reliving it, talking about it, having counselling and therapy, is that you re-traumatize yourself over and over again, and it becomes this label that you then feel you couldn't possibly have the life, the success, the things that other people have because you had these traumatic experiences. And I think what's been really powerful for us is I've been really working on visualizations to actually bump up my feel-good chemicals. So it might be because of past experiences that my natural state is to wake up and worry or feel anxious about the next hour, the next week, the next day, the next, you know. And just to kind of give you an insight, this week, I was just thinking about, I was driving in the car yesterday and I was taking my mum and dad to the airport, and my mum is going home for a scan, which is always something where we all would naturally worry a little bit about. She's just having a health checkup. She has a history of cancer. So it's naturally something that we could, I say we as a family, could allow our brains to go to worst case scenario. You also had a visa appointment where they've changed the criteria. So they're now asking for more paperwork. And I suddenly realized I should never have read Eat, Pray, Love sequel.
Oh, is there a sequel?
There's a sequel. And do you know what happens?
No.
The love of their life, sorry, spoiler alert, gets deported. So they're trying to go home to America together.
Oh, no.
And he gets deported. So, of course, in my head, when they've asked, I'm through, and now they're asking for a bit more paperwork from you. So I'm going...
Do you know what, though? This is the beauty of living in the arse end of nowhere. They'll never find me.
just
stay in.
To be fair, on dog walks, we keep finding these random little caves, and you keep going, imagine living in there. And I'm like,
could be a modern...
Why would we imagine living in there?
A legit modern day caveman.
A little cave.
Yeah. It's literally a proper cave, isn't it? It's like you could live in there.
Yeah. I'll bring you like scraps from...
Just like throw stuff in every now and again.
To be fair, you don't like showering and washing. It's just be perfect. And obviously you can walk around naked, which you also like doing. No one's gonna... Yeah.
I love it.
So
this could all work out.
And then finally, Hamish has to have an operation on Friday, bless him. He's got a hernia. And I had a dog, a Great Dane. We took him for an x-ray when I was about 10 years old, just went for a normal checkup, and the x-ray stopped his heart and he never came home. So my head, when I was driving in the car, was like, does life want to throw me any more things to worry about this week? In amongst the usual stuff that you worry about, I was like, these are kind of big things that could happen in my life. And it's interesting that in the past, I would have literally gone for some really long runs, trained really hard, just kept super, super busy. Whereas actually what I did was, I said this to you, I allowed all the feelings to come in and accept the worry and understand, of course, it's natural to fear the consequences of these events, because in the past, that's what they have. There are potential negatives. But then I just let it go and I turned some music up really loud. I did some singing, actually had a big cry, and a big, you know, when you have a messy cry, snot everywhere, and you have to blow your nose, and you release hormones when you do that.
Do you?
To make yourself feel better. So I released not just hormones, but a lot of snot, and then just went for a walk, and I was like, I feel so much better for that. I've got some perspective. There is no point worrying about the outcomes. And also a question to ask yourself is, could I do anything differently now to change the outcome? And actually I was doing everything I possibly could to secure a good outcome. And the bit that I probably wasn't doing was visualizing a positive outcome. And that's where the visualizations have become really powerful to me, because I'm really good at visualizing the worst outcome. Like I'm a pro at that, but I'm not very good at the positive one. And even leapfrogging the outcomes of these 3 events and just going, where do you see yourself, you know, in a few years' time? Like, what's the house look like? What job are you doing? Who are you with? Who are you hanging out with? And these are things that I never made time for when I was in a very fearful, anxious state, very stressed, very busy, very distracted. It was all about work. It was all about going for a run. It was all about my next dopamine hit, coffee, chocolate, whatever it might be. And now actually sitting, and it has to be, this is the other thing that I've learned on a lot of the kind of people I've been following talking about this, is it has to be something that you enjoy doing when you're trying to encourage the release of more positive emotions. So visualization really works for me in terms of, I just never did it Well, I haven't done it, I realized, for about probably since we went into business, because I found running a business so scary that I realized I've never actually sat there and gone, visualize the success of this, visualize your office, where do you work, what do you do? And it's just really powerful. And I know a lot of people do it through NLP and cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think it was suggested to me before, and I don't know why I never took it seriously. And when I really fell ill, I was trying to visualize getting better, but the point is not to do that, because you don't just want to get better in life. What are you getting better for is the question that you could ask yourself. What are you going to do? Who are you going to do it with? Where will you be when you do it? What does it look like? And you go to the deepest detail, and what you start to feel, I've only done it a few times, is that you just feel all your serotonin and your feel good chemicals coming back to you. You feel yourself smiling when you're doing it, which is amazing. Like, oh, not like a bit of a nutter. But I've noticed if I get up and I can feel the kind of fear mode kicking in, it's like go and light a candle, sit down, do some deep breaths, and then visualize, sometimes that outcome. So like, obviously I'd love to visualize Hamish pottering home on Friday and basically annoying us because he wants a sausage, headbutting you at the table because he wants a bit of your steak. So visualize that, rather than worrying about the worst case scenario. And then just to do that little check of, is there anything I could do? Sort of with the visa situation, I said to you, have we done everything? And you've done everything. So now it's just then believe. Yeah. And believe whatever the outcome, we will find a way to be happy, whatever the outcome.
Yeah. And that was really nice, like when you said that the other day, because it was like, because I joked, didn't I, and said like, we might have to have a long distance relationship because you're not, because Keris is in, Keris is safe, she's approved, like we might have to get used to her.
And it's a shame that you've got to go home, man.
Oh, see you in a month. Yeah. But we did say that, we were like, because what is it? What's the tourist visa is 90 days in any 6-month period. So I said, like, well, would it be that bad if I basically did a month here and then a month home? Like, like not ideal, but it's.
Or we do a month somewhere else in the world.
Or somewhere else, yeah. We just kind of like potter around. We keep saying we're going to get a camper van, don't we? And just kind of like go on an adventure. So again, it's like being able to reframe it, and it's like you've almost got your ideal. This is what I'd love to happen, but then actually, is the fallback plan that terrible? No, like, anyone else listening would be like getting a camper van and then each alternating countries each month. Like, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Which it is. But I think when something's almost not your number one choice, it's almost like, even though it still sounds great, and I think that's the whole point. It's like, in fact, actually, that just ties in nicely. It's like, it's all about reframing things. It's not about dismissing things or suppressing things, because you've got to acknowledge things for what they are. Like, the reality is there is a chance I may not get the visa. And it's like, yes, I can positive affirmations, visualize and all of that. And I will, and I am. But at the same time, like, if it doesn't happen, then it's like, okay, cool. Like, I need to reframe this and think of, like, what are the next steps? How could I potentially appeal it, or what does that mean for where we're going to be, whatever it might be. But
also, though, an interesting thing is, I spoke to a friend recently about, I have a lot of clients that have, and friends, clauses to happiness.
Yeah.
So
sorry,
right,
you're boring me to death. No, I'm joking. Do you know what that was then?
What?
That was, I need protein.
Yeah.
I've been a little carb. I was about to say a carb monkey. It's meant to be carb junkie. Let's go with carb monkey. But little carb monkey this morning, haven't I?
To be fair,
all the carbs.
When I saw you with the honey pot, most people will get the honey pot and get the spoon and just drizzle it. Matt this morning got the honey pot and just tipped it upside down into a rice cake, and I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's one of them mornings.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't just pouring it directly into my mouth. Can you imagine?
That's tomorrow.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, the clauses to happiness. So I think sometimes you have these, I'm going to be happy when. I'm going to be happy when this happens. I'll be happy. Yeah. And you can't live life like that, because the when and the if might not happen or might take a while to happen. And it also comes back to health. When we have health goals, you often see, I get everything from fertility goals to fat loss goals to I want to be better, pain-free. And everybody is like, when this happens, it's like, you know, then life is good. And even with something like a fertility goal, which, you know, is a really sensitive subject for a lot of people, but having kind of been there ourselves as a couple and having to go, we don't think it's going to happen for us. We've got two outcomes here. We could go down this route and invest and try this, or we could accept that it's not going to happen, or we could just wait and see. And what we kind of agreed was that we had to be happy with any of those outcomes. And if we did end up spending a lot of money, we had to accept that it may happen and it may not happen. And we would be sad with the may not, but we wouldn't believe that we couldn't be happy if that was the case.
Yeah.
And my worry with a lot of people is if you have a goal that may not happen, or an objective or a life, it's a goal that doesn't sound right, really. If you have something that you truly desire in life, but feel that you could never be happy without it, it's a really difficult situation to be in. And I think it's great to try and get some support through that, because it's like, you're just pinning your hopes on something so much. Like this situation, for example, us living here is what I absolutely wholeheartedly want. But if it won't happen, I know that we'll find happiness somewhere else. It's taught me so much about but it's taught me so much about what makes me happy. And I said to you yesterday, I am so grateful to Portugal, whether we end up here or not, because it's taught me what makes me really happy. The people that you're around, the pace of life, the time in nature, the time outside. It's taught me a lot of things. So wherever we end up in life, I'm going to start to implement as much of that as I possibly can and make those a priority. So I think it's really important wherever you're. And I say this with a weight loss goal, because we often also say people lose weight when they're happy, you know, as in, yes, you can have that period of time where you're on holiday and you're like, way, and or you meet a partner. We talked about this the other day, didn't we? I wrote a blog called Love Chub, where it's like you gain weight because you're eating out all the time, and I was eating your portion sizes when we first met, and we were drinking like several nights a week and eating pick a mix together at the cinema. And and then I was like, I really wouldn't normally do all these things. And eventually over time, I found my kind of normal routine with everything. But there are most of the time we find with clients, don't we, that actually focusing on filling your cup, getting your needs met, your emotional needs met, spending time with great people, your need for the excess sugar, the chocolate, the booze is so much less. But it's not the way that people look at it. Most people are like, some people I know I work with don't even socialize because they're overweight and they don't like how they look, so they don't go out. So they actually are more hiding away, ordering takeaways, and not stepping out of the comfort zone.
Well, here's a really interesting observation as well, right? Based on that, because we do, like, working with clients, like we get a lot of the, I'll be happy when I get down to this weight or this stress size or whatever it may be, as if that's just gonna change every single aspect of their life. But it's not. It's just one part of it. But a really interesting convo that I had with one of my clients the other day was around that, and the way the conversation was, it was like, I'm happiest when I weigh this. And it's like, well, no, that can't work like that. You can't be like, I'm only happy when I'm this specific weight on the scales. But what we then spoke about
with a bit of flying and water retention.
Exactly. But the way the conversation went is I asked them what they were doing when they were last that weight. And when they kind of shared what it was they were doing, essentially it boiled down to they were making time for themselves. They were happier within themselves because they had more boundaries around their time, and they were prioritizing themselves more. And that's how we left it. It was like, look, we're not going to base your happiness on this particular number. We're going to base your happiness on you almost repeating the actions that you were back then when you were that way, and it came down to them essentially putting themselves first more often, because it had got lost over time, and it happens, you know, like you change jobs, you have kids and things like that, all these things that do take up your time 100%.
But you know what I think also, the neglect of self leads to this desire to like consume. And by consume, I mean like when you neglect self, you just want to, I often find personally that I just want to consume in some way, and that consumption could be shop or look on Vinted for hours, or you know what I mean, like consume. But then it's also like crap TV, chocolate, coffee after coffee, you know, like it's almost, I have an insatiable appetite and I don't understand it, and I'm like, this is not me, and I don't like that I'm repeating these behaviors, but why can't I stop? And it's like you just said, it's self-neglect. Because when I'm filling my cup and I'm with friends who are amazing to be with, or I've just done some time out. In fact, speaking to somebody this week, they mentioned a word that has never really come up in a consultation, but they just said since having a family, they've really lacked privacy. And I thought that was really interesting, because I was like, God, I remember as a kid a few times it was like annoying my mum, pestering her, going, what's for tea? What's for tea? And she was trying to go, she's on the exercise bike one day and she was like, for God's sake, can I not have 5 minutes? You know, like
I remember my mum once telling me, like, she was like, stop following me. Just like, what are you doing now, Mum? Where are you going?
Can I come? The other day I went to the loo and Hamish just followed me all the way to the toilet, put their door open and just kind of sat there staring at me on the loo, which is typical of Hamish. But I remember thinking, I think I did this as a kid. I must have been so annoying. I remember going into my mum and just going, I wanted a friend to come for dinner, and I've like hunted her down and she was on the loo, and I found her in the loo and I was like, Mum, and she's like, let me just go to the loo in peace. Like,
oh, there you are. But
I did think like privacy, you probably do lose it as a parent, and you definitely lose it once you've got a big household. And privacy is really, it's self-care, it's quiet time, it's like time with your thoughts, or time to, and the only time we get privacy now is work, as in when you sit down at a desk and you've got to force yourself to do the stuff, you know, it's like, that's not true privacy, because you're delivering goods for somebody. That's the only time I would say that I'd in the past got that privacy was at my laptop, and it was usually to work, so it wasn't true kind of like quiet time. But there's something else I was going to mention. I can't remember what it was. No, it's gone.
Never mind. Save it for episode 192.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good point to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because I can't stop thinking about ham and cheese omelette.
Is that what you want? Is that going to be your protein here?
Done. Visualized it. I manifested it.
It's on the side. I remember the point, and it's relevant to ham and cheese omelette.
Oh, go on.
It was that something I've been speaking to a lot of clients about is the people that lose weight and keep it off find a template of nutrition and a lifestyle and exercise plan that they enjoy. And it's something that everyone associates weight loss and any health goal often with like punishment and pain. We mentioned this on the last podcast, but specifically weight loss, people think it's going to be punishing and it has to be depriving. And so a lot of my clients, whenever they want to lose weight, go back to a diet that worked in the past because it was just awful. And recently I've been speaking to a lot of clients about saying, please, like if you know that low carb works, go and find some really good low carb recipes. Replace the foods that you're craving. If you are still wanting to have the bread, the cake, try and find there's low carb recipe sites, there's alternatives, there's now amazing products out there that kind of, you know, wraps and stuff that are made out of fiber. There's ways to make this nutrition template sustainable and enjoy it. And people just forget that. And it does require a little bit of time in the kitchen, just trying to find ways to, I've always done this. As soon as I'm like, oh, I feel better on this way of eating, the next thing is, how do I enjoy this way of eating? Like, I've got to find recipes and 100%. Like your like condiments or pickles or whatever, like a slice of cheese on everything, but find ways that you enjoy it, and then it becomes second nature. You're never going to be able to follow that for a long period of time and keep those results if you don't enjoy it. And it's a fight and a fight and a fight. That
applies to everything, right? Like training, job, you know, there's got to be that element of enjoyment.
What you resist persists. So if it's a fight, it's never gonna deliver the goods.
Preach, sister.
Right, omelette time.
On that note, I think just to wrap up, folks, is essentially what we're saying is it's okay to feel, you know, all these different emotions. They're all good emotions. but it's what you do with them that I think is the most important thing. And I think
they're all valid emotions.
They're all valid, 100%. They're
not all good.
No, but they
valid.
are good because, you know, it helps you
to learn.
You learn from them. You know, you learn about yourself, you learn about a situation, and ultimately you will grow. Like when you do spend a bit more time with your emotions and ask yourself the questions of like, why am I feeling this way right now? And I think that's been the biggest part of my growth over the last couple of years is being able to ask myself that question and come up with the answers on my own, sometimes with a little bit of help, you know, through conversations with you or the guys on Awaken Man project and friends and stuff like that. So
how long have you been on that project for?
I think it was up to 2.5, maybe. Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Find out dates.
Anything you want to add to that, Keris?
No, all good.
Beautiful stuff. So there is, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got something. I think you can come away from these episodes just with a little something. Happy days.
All good.
That's the way I look at it.
And if you can share and review our podcast, we'd be so grateful.
Share the love.
Yeah.
It would be
more people can find us. So.
Hugely appreciated.
Yes.
Speaking of love, big love. And see you in episode 192.
Bye-bye.
See ya.